Welcome to Inspirational Transformational TV show. Amy Whitney here today with my very special guest, Wendy Matthews. The journey that Wendy takes us on today is a little bit of a heart journey. She takes us through her years of suffering from mental illness, through depression, suicide attempts, and brings us out the other side to where she is today, an inspirational, shining woman who runs her own business. She has a company called Happy Being Me, and when you hear Wendy speak and when you see her light shining from her, you cannot help but know for certain she is Happy Being Wendy. Enjoy the show. Wendy Matthews, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Now, I like to start my interviews with basically some background information, what led you to where you are today. So is it a fair place to start your story at maybe your preteen years?
Sure.
What was going through your head, what sort of space you were in at that time in your life?
Yeah, I always say I started my illness back when I was 12 because I had my first suicide attempt when I was 12 years old. I didn't tell anybody. I kept it a secret, and I hid everything from everybody. I know my parents knew I was sad, probably thought I was moody more than anything. It was 1978, so it was a different time in the world when you didn't talk about things like that. So that was my first of 9 suicide attempts throughout the years, and I got over that, and I still struggled a lot through school, and once I hit high school, I started drinking to cope with all the pressures and what was going on, and my depression, my anxiety, which was really quite high, and my depression that kept me quite low too. So I made it through 5 years of high school and left without graduating, but I left and I met and married my husband a few years later, and we moved to Nova Scotia. So all during that time in high school, I had a few more suicide attempts. I was drinking, and by the time I moved to Nova Scotia, I'd stopped drinking, but I turned to cutting myself as a way of dealing with everything. So
when you talk about suicide attempts, were you being found unconscious, or it's hard for me to fathom how this wasn't picked up by your support system through the school, friends, family? Not to be judgmental.
No, that's through school. School really doesn't pick up on anything. This was a lot of years ago, a lot of years ago. So things are a little bit different. There was no support and help in school. Right. Either you were in school or you weren't in school, and that's all there was to it. So I would overdose. I'd go to sleep, and either I'd get sick or I'd wake up the next morning. I would say I wasn't very good at it, but I guess that's a good thing. My family, once you become a teenager, it's really easy to move out of everybody's life, even though you're living in the same space, because you're out all the time, you don't talk to anybody, you're moody anyway, so things just don't get picked up on. Yes. So it's the same with kids these days, a lot of times it is passed by because of the way teenagers have their moods and stuff.
That's actually one of my questions I was going to ask later, but it sort of segued nicely now. Do you have any signs that parents of today should be looking for, like real warning bells, not just, they're always wearing their iPod? Do you know any specific signs you would tell them to watch out for?
There's a few signs that are, you can always go to the Canadian Mental Health Association, and there's a few different agencies, but they will all tell you, giving away your possessions that mean a lot to you, totally really withdrawing. There's always a point to your teenagers withdrawing because they're trying to find themselves or whatever. But there's a point as a parent, you kind of say, maybe this is too much. And ask them, talk to them about it, because that's one of the things, nobody wants to talk about it. And, ask them. It doesn't hurt to ask them. At least it shows that you're interested in how they're feeling, and maybe they would feel a little safer to be able to talk to people.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
Good advice, because I think, like you were saying, from your generation, the communication wasn't as open the way it is today.
No. We were, set up to hide everything, basically, and that's what I did most of my life until I was 26. I had my son when I was 25.
And I read somewhere that you started to hear voices. Is that correct at that point?
Yeah, when I gave birth to my son, that was the first time I started hearing voices and all kinds of different things, hallucinations and delusions. So it was a struggle, and because I was so old when it started to happen, I knew when I started talking about things to people, and they would kind of look at me funny or go, "What are you talking about?" I knew it wasn't appropriate or wasn't right, so I just kind of backed up and kept my mouth shut. So like when you're younger, you don't have the life experience behind you. You can't read people as well and things like that. So because I was so much older, I had that life experience. I knew when people started questioning me or saying, "What are you talking about?" to keep my mouth shut and to move on. So, yeah.
So still just keeping it all inside, and with a young child, you were were you sort of isolated in Nova Scotia, being new to the area?
Absolutely. I had been there for a while, but I had no family there. My family all lived back here in St. Catharines, and so I was there by myself. My husband was in the Navy, so he was sailing all the time, and my son had colics, so he screamed all the time. I know. It was rough. It was rough. So, when I was 26, I once again tried to kill myself, and that time it would have happened had my husband not found me, and so that was the first time anybody had ever known about my illness or what was going on with me or
anything. From 12 to 26, you went through it yourself. Yeah.
It was funny because the weeks leading up to it, my husband was home, and I kept on telling him if he went to sea, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be there when he came home, and he kept on thinking I was going to leave him.
Oh.
So.
Still not, the warning signs not picked up.
No.
When you reflect back, do you now look and go, I was meant to live? With that many suicide attempts, that many things happening in your life, do you feel that you have a divine purpose?
I don't know if it's a divine purpose, but I think what brought me through all that, really. Like, I always say living's hard, but for me, dying was harder than living. I know it's awful to laugh about, but, so, you have to keep your a positive view on things too, and I think I have something to say, and I think I'm an inspirational speaker as well. So if I had heard anybody's story that was positive when I was very, very ill, I think it would have been a huge impact on me, because all you ever heard was the things that go on TV and in the news, all the negative stories. When you're in group, all you see is all the negative stuff because everybody's ill around you. So you only see, and you make this little cocoon out of your life because you don't let anybody in, because you have no emotions left to have anybody in your life. And it's just really easier to stay there than it is to pop out of your illness.
It's a vicious cycle, really.
It is, yeah.
So when your husband found you in the attempted suicide state, is that when you got medical help?
Yes, I was hospitalized.
Okay.
Yeah, I was hospitalized in Nova Scotia for a couple of weeks, and then I came home from the hospital. My husband had to go back to sea, and so he actually took me home to St. Catharines, back here to St. Catharines to my parents, him, my son, and I, to live with them for the summer. until we figured out what we were going to do. And at the end of that summer, I was so torn because I loved my husband and I wanted to be with him, but I knew I couldn't live out there.
Right.
So it was so hard, and thank goodness my father, he got on the phone, he says, come home, just quit your job and come home, we'll help you until you figure out what you're going to do. And he did, so, and it just so happened, everything kind of fell into place. His contract with the Navy was up in October, so he was able to leave in October. I went back for a month before we moved back home, and so it all kind of worked out. We lived with my parents for a little while. Yeah. I love them for it, but we wanted our own place.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. So and so he came back here and he started working, and it was so much. There was so much support here. Like, without a support system, you can just fail so easily. And with a support system, with my family and that, they don't let you fail as often. They kind of push you a little harder than you would. Yes. And they don't let you stay, I remember my sister would phone me, come on, let's go out shopping. No, well, I'm coming now anyway, so you better get dressed. So, and they wouldn't let me do the things that, that I wanted to do, where I just wanted to lay down and hide. Yes. So, yeah.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful tribute to families, because I've heard many times people say, oh, I know my friend's depressed, but what can I do? I'm not a doctor, what can I do? And it's being present, keeping them active, and in living life, really.
Yeah. I always say, if you got a friend and they keep on saying, you keep on asking if they need help or whatever, just go over. Make them tea, help them straighten out the room, because a lot of times everything's in disarray because you don't have the energy to do anything. And, you don't want to bother anybody, so you always say, no, I don't need help, no, I don't need help. And you do want somebody there. And you do want to talk to somebody, so my advice is, bring the tea and with you, so nobody has to make anything, and sit and have, sit down and chat.
That's such a beautiful thing that you're talking about, because I live in a neighborhood with a lot of elderly, and I think the same thing. Like, I don't see any visitors going to see them, etc. And it's like, just taking that action to anybody who's isolated would be such a gift.
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned the elderly, because I was talking to a gentleman at a show I was doing a little while ago, and he said to me, he says, you guys all have email now. He says, as we get older, we don't have that. We're not into computers, but we don't get mail anymore. Yes. Because mail used to come, and that's how you used to correspond with people instead of email. So all you get is bills now. So he says, just a letter to say hi would be beautiful.
Ooh, let's shout that out.
Yes.
Because I'm still supporting Canada Post. I'm a letter writer. So.
Yes, good. There's something about pen to paper that makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, did you receive an official diagnosis?
Yeah. When I was 30 years old, I finally got a proper diagnosis. Okay. I had been diagnosed quickly back in Nova Scotia. And then when I came back to St. Catharines, I had to find another doctor, and I had a diagnosis with him. And then he retired, and so I have my current doctor that I have now. I've had him for 10 years or so, and he finally, at 30 years old, I finally got a proper diagnosis, which is bipolar schizoaffective disorder.
And that's treatable?
Yeah, I always say, medication does not fix everything. The side effects of a lot of the medications are horrible. Okay. Things are getting way better than they were back in when I first started with my illness. Actually, it's a funny story. When before I had my suicide attempt in Nova Scotia, about the month before, I kept on telling my doctor I was so depressed, and I cried all the time. And he said to me, you can't be depressed. He says, you don't have depression, you're overweight. Because to him, or to the criteria at that time was you had to have weight loss because you couldn't eat due to your depression. So yeah, I know. And I'm like, so, you know, like it was just like kind of one hit after another. You finally reach out and then you're told that no, there's nothing wrong with you. So that hurt.
Thank goodness. I think the medical industry's come leaps and bounds then as well.
Yeah,
I would assume.
yeah.
I don't think
it's still, much better than it was, absolutely.
Beautiful. And you have a beautiful business. We're sitting in it right now. It's called Happy Being Me.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Like I mean, even the title, when you look at your life history, like the title, you go, wow, really? You know?
Well, let's see. So I was unemployed. I was on CPPD for over 10 years. It was almost, I think it was 14 years. When I got my diagnosis when I was 30 years old, I was told I was never going to work again.
Okay.
And I was kind of I was really okay with it because I had been sick for so long, and just somebody validating how I felt and that I couldn't work at that time. So I went home, kind of settled for my life for a little, not for very long, because I kind of got mad and I thought, how dare anybody tell me what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And I thought, I wanted a normal life. I just wanted normalcy. I didn't realize that there was no normal anymore. But I just wanted what everybody else had. And I wanted to go to work, and I wanted to show my son that that I was a fully functioning working part of society, and I didn't want him to see anything different. So I started back really with just going to school, getting my grade 12, and then I started working shortly after that, and just over a 5-year period I went from not working to slowly a few hours here, a few hours there, to working full-time finally. And then so I was working for quite a while, and my illness creeped back up.
Oh.
And which was very, very hard for me because I had done so well for so long, and I felt like a failure. I felt like I was this, fraud thinking that I could be okay. And so I had to go off work, and I was actually on EI, and which qualified me for this program called the OSEB, which is the Ontario Self-Employment Benefit Program.
Nice.
And at that time, it was the summer of 2007, and in the summer, I woke up in the middle of the night one night, with the fact that I was happy being me. No matter what was going on in my life, I was not my illness. I was happy with who I was. And it didn't matter about all the rest of the stuff. So there I am laying in bed. I can't go back to sleep because these words keep going through my head. And I thought, I want other people to feel this way. And I want them to be able to celebrate who they are and not worry about all the extra stuff that comes along with life. And so I thought, well, I got up and I sat at my computer and I started a business plan. And I wanted to keep it fun and light and easygoing. And I wanted people to be able to celebrate what they love. And I thought, well, we're going to throw it on t-shirts and the words and put some fun characters to it. And now we have over 100 ways to celebrate who you are, all the way from kids to infants to adults.
Beautiful. And
I also brought in my love for organics and everything eco-friendly, so our main line is all out of bamboo or clothing. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely wonderful to look at. Will I be able to put some JPEG pictures?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll put them up while we're talking.
Yeah.
So it's so cool. And
thanks.
I'll put your website up as well, and people can order online. Or?
Yep, you can shop for happiness 24/7. www.happybeingme.com.
I know people who do that.
And we also have a store now in St. Catharines that we've had for about the last year. It's almost a year now that we opened up. So we've actually been in business since 2008. We're at lots of festivals and events and trade shows and all that. And so just kind of spreading the happiness.
That's beautiful. I love it. Now, Something I like to ask everyone that I interview.
Sure.
What's been your biggest inspiration?
I don't know if it's an inspiration, but it was a motivation. When I was told I would never work again, I'm a very stubborn person, and I don't like to be told what to do. But my biggest inspiration, again, I don't know whether it's is my son. I did not want him growing up. Not that there's anything wrong with having an illness. I just wanted to show him that you can achieve things while still having an illness. My biggest thing in life was to figure out that everybody would talk about recovery, and I thought, I was so ill. I couldn't get off the couch, and every bit of me hurt, and it, just trying to look after myself, never mind my family, was just a chore. And so when I finally figured out that recovery does not mean recovering from my illness, it means recovering my life with my illness. And that was one of the biggest things in my life that changed everything around.
It's really beautiful.
Thanks.
And your final words of wisdom today?
My final words of wisdom would be that anything's possible, and that if you keep trying, eventually you'll find your path. And your path may not be where you thought it was going to go, but if you follow with your heart, you're going to go to exactly where you need to be.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story and for your beautiful line of inspiration that you have out in the world.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Wendy, thank you so much for sharing your story today. Thank you for being a person who recovers but still goes back into that space to help others by sharing your story. I think it would probably be very easy to close a chapter that was a difficult time in your life and walk away. But you have the courage and the strength and the love to continually speak about those aspects of your past in order to help others. And that action alone is so beautiful to me. Your Happy Being Me company is a delight to look at. The merchandise, to be in the space, to be in your shop space is beautiful. Your energy and your vibrancy is a true delight to be around. So from the bottom of my heart, I wish you much love and many blessings.